Welcome to UFHL Now! A close-up look at the ultimate fantasy hockey league. The most realistic fantasy gameplay. High stakes. High reward. Here's your host, the owner of Duckman's domination in the UFHL, and the mighty Mallards of the UFAHL, Dean Millard.
Hello there, and welcome to episode 35 of UFHL Now, as we are now officially 1 month into the UFHL season. My name is Dean Millard. Glad to have you aboard. UFHL Insider Larry Fisher will join us very shortly, and this is how you can get in touch with us if you would like to. At the UFHL on Twitter, at UFHL_scouting, and at UFF Sports. You can send an email, info@uffsports.com, and the website, www.uffsports.com. And of course, we wouldn't be here without wonderful sponsors from Instat, where you can check out great video. EliteProspects.com has all the statistics. Fanalytica.tech will help you scout properly. Puckpedia, keep up to date with all the great contracts and everything going on in the NHL boardrooms. And Maplewood Hockey, proud supplier of the official UFHL jerseys. Great to have everybody involved in the program and involved in the league as well. All right, this is what we will have for you on the show today. We will get to our six-pack of top performers for the last 7 days. Our top 10 standings. We'll take a closer look at a statistic. UFHL Insider Larry Fisher has a ton of stuff because we didn't have a show last week, and we will get to the duck call a little bit later on in the program. But right after this, we are going to dive in to the UFHL Now.
This is UFHL Now with Dean Millard. Get in the game, where you own the game.
All right, let's dive into our six-pack of top performers, and we're starting with Troy Terry of the Yetis. Just an absolute tear that Troy Terry has been on. 7 points, 4 goals, 3 assists. Just absolutely going crazy on the ice. You throw in a ton of shots, 2 game winners. That's a pretty impressive week for an Anaheim star, young Anaheim star, just 24 years of age. Troy Terry, 24.73 points in the last 7 days, 6.18 points per game. That's pretty impressive. Mikael Granlund, not far behind. He was at 23.82 points per game, 7 helpers, 6 shots, a penalty drawn, and 4 hits. You also had Alex Petrangelo sliding in there as well, 22.56 points per game. Petrangelo had 2 goals, 3 assists, had some PIMs as well to help him get there. Moving on, Mackenzie Blackwood was the top goaltender, a record of 2-0 and an overtime loss, 103 saves, just 6 goals against, and a shutout. So nice job for the Tornadoes pipe man, Shane Gostisbehere. Traded to Arizona and a member of the West Coast Express, and he had a big week as well. 6 points, 9 shots, a power play point as well. And Leon Draisaitl of the Grizzlies, you see him here quite often. Another big night last night. 3 goals, 3 assists in the last 7 days. 2 game winners, well, dating back to last Friday. And a power play point for Leon Draisaitl as well. So the Tornadoes, West Coast Grizzlies, they're loving it. The Yetis, the Bentley Jacks, and the Bentley Jacks and the Eliminators loving things this week as far as our 6-pack of top performers. Now, As for our top 5, we dive into a stat. There's not a lot of distance right now between a lot of the stats, so a lot of them are bunched up and there's a lot of ties. This is one of them I could find that actually does have so a little bit of separation anyway. This is penalty minute leaders. Marcus Felino of the Titans. You got the Blades, Nathan Bastian. Jeremy Lazon of the Eliminators there is in the Blizzard rather, in the number 3 spot. Nate Thompson of Rock Republic in number 4 at 29 PIMs, and Pat Maroon rounding out the number 5 spot of the Stingrays with 28 points. There is actually Liam O'Brien is actually a free agent who is number 2 in the penalty minute department with I believe he's got 32 penalty minutes overall. But he is, like I said, a free agent. 31 penalty minutes for Liam O'Brien, but a free agent, so he's not actually on a UFHL team. So that is your top 5 penalty minute leaders there. I haven't actually broken it down into how many of those. I know Nate Thompson, a couple of fighting majors when he was a member of Duckman's Domination. So that's the penalty minutes and the fights that he would get as well. So there are your top 5 penalty minute leaders. Now let's get to our top 10 standings. So, some changes almost daily when it comes to the standings. This battle between the Grizzlies and the Royals is pretty awesome right now. It is really quite fun to watch. So, the Grizzlies sitting in the top spot. The Royals are number 2. The Yetis sitting in at the number 3 spot. West Coast Express at number 4. Rock Republic sitting in at number 5, and then Red Army, Battlehawks, Titans, that they've stayed in kind of that same spot that they've been in for a little while. You know what? Actually, I'm just looking at, I don't know if this changed, but the standings now have the Royals 2.17 points ahead. So that changed from when we actually put together. I don't know if Fantrax did an adjustment, but it should be the Royals as that number 1 spot. Ahead of the Grizzlies, according to Fantrax, as I just refreshed it as we are recording here. But you know, you just that's what Fantrax is saying right now, and the Stingrays and the Gators at number 9 and number 10 when it comes to the rankings. So interesting stuff going on, but that battle between the Grizzlies and the Royals has been absolutely legendary, and hopefully it keeps continuing because it's been definitely a lot of fun. All right, speaking of fun, let's get to UFHL Insider Larry Fisher now.
Time to get the scoop on the UFHL with our insider, Larry Fisher. He's had lines in the water all week long. What will he reel in for us today? Let's dive in and find out what's going on with the UFHL now!
Always fun when I get to chat with my insider here on UFHL Now, the UFHL Insider Larry Fisher. And man, it feels like forever since we've chatted in this format. Obviously, we've been busy with a lot of other things. Took last week off as I was in Regina for the baseball auctions, and it seems like we missed so much in just 1 week off, Larry.
No doubt, yeah. We take 1 week off, and then, of course, the Jack Eichel blockbuster goes down in the NHL, and all sorts of changes. Obviously, you know, Chicago in the NHL fired their coaching staff. Anaheim's GM's no longer there. And then even you look in the personnel-wise off the ice in the UFHL, the Snipers promoted Marcus Borkowski to GM and brought Gabe Foley into from scout up to assistant GM. promoted him. And then the Blizzard, Jessica Stuckey is now back part of the ownership group. She's obviously done well. We'll talk a lot about the Blizzard this week, Dean. They're the busiest franchise in the UFHL right now or over these last 2 weeks. But Jessica Stuckey is rejoined Showtime with the Blizzard in a co-ownership or part owner arrangement as well. So there's been big news off the ice and tons of big news on the ice as well. But certainly congratulations, Dean, on a very successful UFLB franchise auction and great work there with Ultimate Fantasy League Baseball.
Thank you. It was certainly not a solo effort from Brian Hernandez to Matt Soren to Gerald Smiley to the founders and yourself. It was a lot of fun. And you know what? The stuff just keeps on coming with UFFS. We just finished, as you mentioned, UFLB and hockey, basketball, football, full flight. And we have another league in hockey to announce. Well, not to announce, but to I guess just remind people. I honestly think that you're not going to have any trouble getting a bidding war with 10 franchises, but you have to be really excited about Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors. We are so close to the franchise auctions.
Yeah, next weekend, Dean. Next weekend at this time will be next Saturday, actually, a week from tomorrow is when the franchise auction will commence and run through Sunday. And we're very excited about this league, Dean. It's something that's, there's so many fantasy hockey leagues out there, but there's not a dynasty league for the World Juniors. And I think this is going to really be a revolutionary concept that I think is going to catch on certainly for this inaugural season, but I think it's just going to gain momentum year over year. Franchise auction next weekend, November 20th and 21st, 500 USD is the minimum bid. It is a dynasty league, as mentioned, so any players that are potential returnees, you'll be able to bring back for future seasons or future tournaments. The rule book is in progress, Dean, and the 10 successful franchise owners will have some say in format and rules, obviously, going forward, as there is in every UFHL league. But for the gameplay side, Dean, for the inaugural tournament, it's looking likely that we'll do total points throughout. Just for the inaugural season, based on obviously everything is going to be manually stat tracked for the first year on Google Sheets until we're on the UFFS gameplay engine with a live scoring element, hopefully for year 2 is the plan. So initial season would be the total points throughout the tournament. Year 2, though, Dean, this is where it gets really cool. And then, potentially we could even work this into year 1 if the stars align, and we are talking about it. But year 2, you could certainly mirror the World Junior Championship format with total points for the preliminary round. Then you eliminate the bottom 2 franchises with 8 franchises, the top 4 from each pool advancing based on seeding. Those 8 franchises do a draft on New Year's Day because obviously the preliminary round always ends with the New Year's Eve games, and then the quarterfinals start on January 2nd already. So there's only the one day there to do a New Year's Day draft to fill the empty roster spots of the 2 countries, players that you lost from the 2 countries that were relegated or did not make the medal round in the actual tournament, and then proceed with head-to-head format throughout the medal round. So quarterfinals, semifinals, and your medal games. So I think that's the future of UFWJ, but for the first season, the gameplay might be simplified to total points from all 10 countries, players from all 10 countries throughout the tournament. And then certainly, Dean, the prizes and awards, gold, silver, and bronze medalists for the top 3 in total points in year 1. And not only are you getting, the acknowledgement that you were the gold medal winner in UFWJ, you are actually going to get a physical gold medal. We're going to get medals made up. And then as well, Dean, some player awards, these aren't decided yet, but we're looking at obviously in the World Juniors, they do MVP, top forward, top defenseman, and top goaltender. And again, these would be based on UFWJ fantasy points because our scoring system is going to be a little different than how they're awarded in the real world. So I think that would be a cool element for the player awards, but certainly a lot to be decided still going forward and certainly going into year 2 when there's more technology advancements and capabilities for UFWJ.
I just think it's amazing that we're doing this, and yeah, sure, it might be total points throughout the tournament for this year, which is still very awesome. But the idea of kind of mirroring a little bit what we do with the UFHL in that playoff draft. And let's be honest, that playoff draft is going to be from two teams that are being relegated. It's not like it's going to take you 5 hours to get through that player draft if you were to do that on New Year's Day or whatever it might be. So it's not going to take a lot. You could even do it as almost like a slow draft if you wanted to over a few hours. So I don't think that would, but I love that idea moving forward. And I love the idea of actually getting gold medals. And I think a lot of people are excited about this. I think a lot of owners, and particularly scouts who are going to have some players in this tournament, are really, really excited.
They are, Dean. Being able to create that revenue stream for scouts for players that aren't in, advancing to the UFHL yet for a couple of years in some cases, Connor Bedard, Matthew Mishkov, these guys could be getting a nice revenue stream from the UFWJ League during. And like I said, Dean, I think that the playoff draft or the medal round draft is so cool because you're drafting the franchises that advance, the 8 franchises that advance are drafting from the 2 franchises that are relegated or missed the medal round. But what if Connor Bedard or Matthew Mishkov's team, what if they drafted them first overall and the rest of their team was bad? Then those are the players that they're going to be drafting to take with them to the medal round. So they're going to fill their spots from, Austria and maybe Switzerland or whoever, Germany, whoever doesn't make it out of the preliminary round. They're going to replace those players, their bottom end of their roster, with some real high-end guys going into the medal round. So I think that draft will be quite interesting for sure to see how the seeding goes and everything. So I think that part of the league could be very entertaining going forward if we switch to that preliminary rounds total points, then head-to-head format for the medal round. And the other thing, Dean, that's been a big talking point is the protected list possibilities, because obviously there's so much roster turnover year to year in the World Juniors. Most countries, Canada on average has probably 5 or fewer returnees. Some countries do bring back, half their roster, 10 players. So on general, franchises will probably have somewhere between 5 and 10 returnees. But what if you turn it into more of a dynasty and really play up the dynasty angle with a 5-man keeper list, we're thinking, or 5-man, futures list, protected list, where you could take any 5 players all the way out as far as scouting goes in the UFFS ecosystem, which is the 2024 eligible. So those kids could be 4 years away, 5 years away from playing in the World Juniors. What if you could get a handful of those guys on a protected list that you're really building your UFWJ franchise for the future as well as the present, and then still have your annual draft to fill in all the current players? Because every year, every player who has value in the World Juniors will have value in the UFWJ. 25-man rosters of current World Junior players, plus potentially this protected list of up to 5 players that would sort of be your ringers for the future. And then I think that also, Dean, gets a lot more transactions because you can trade, maybe you trade somebody that's 2 or 3 years away for a win now guy. And I just think it improves the amount of transactions in a short tournament and a long off season. It gets a lot more interest going year to year. And then certainly, Dean, the draft rules, if you incorporate a protected list, can you draft Aaron Kiviharju in the first round? He's probably he might even play for Finland, in all honesty, Dean, at this year's tournament. He's that good in the U20 league in Finland right now. He might make it as a 15, 16-year-old guy, but he could play 4 years. So are you going to draft him in the first round all of a sudden, or do you draft him at the end, or do we do a separate, futures draft where 5-round draft after the current year where you can only take futures and fill out your protected list that way? But if you incorporate that where you can draft those players in any round, I think that really adds to the intrigue and certainly the strategy of the franchises. Who's building for this year's tournament? Who's building for the future?
Well, it brings in a lot of intrigue and a lot of strategy, and the scouts will be happy. And the scouts have been busy as we move on to the preliminary rankings. Terrific piece that you put out the other day with your rankings as well. And, I know that High Level Scouting is proud to have submitted their list from Craig Button. And, I think certainly all the scouts are happy that these lists are confidential, but then we get to see what everybody's thinking. So big surprises in this top 10 for you at all?
Not a lot of surprises, Dean. The one surprise or partial surprise is that Matthew Savoy comes in at number 2, because heading into this draft year, a lot of people thought his stock was, of the top 5, his stock was the one that was falling. But the Winnipeg Ice are the hottest team right up there with the Edmonton Oil Kings in the Western Hockey League, and Savoy's racking up points. So it was interesting to see scouts. Again, a lot of these prospects lost the season last year. Some went to the USHL, the North Americans. but Savoy is actually outproducing, a lot of these players to start the year. So interesting that he's back up there. But generally speaking, Dean, this top 10, I feel like it's a fairly consensus top 10. I think for the most part, these were the 10 prospects in a lot of people's top 10s and a lot of the scouts. And even if you look up, Sam Cosentino's rankings or, anybody else's, Bob McKenzie's rankings, these are sort of the 10 names that are consistently there. Like I said, Savoy maybe up a little bit, and Brad Lambert, Dean, is one that is sort of been sliding a bit. He's not off to a great start in Finland. And Joachim Kemmel is actually the Finnish prospect who they play on the same team. They've even been line mates at times with JYP. But Kemmel has outshone Brad Lambert, certainly statistically, to start the season. And Lambert's sort of on the bubble whether or not he even makes the World Junior team now, which is surprising because they thought he was going to be a go-to guy. And we seen last year, Dean, Finland left Atu Räty at home and didn't take him to the World Juniors after he had a big role the year before. And look what Atu Räty has done since. He's obviously bounced back. So I think Brad Lambert, this tournament going on in overseas right now, Dean, the U24 Nations Tournament, Brad Lambert's on that roster for Finland. And I think that's a huge proving ground for him to make sure he makes the World Juniors. But up and down the list, it's forward heavy. There's only one defenseman in the top 10, no goaltenders. Number 11 was David Yirasek, who's obviously another right shot defenseman. He's from the Czech Republic, and Simon Nemec's from Slovakia. Those are two European defensemen that could certainly go in the top 10, but overall, very exciting year for flashy high-end forwards. There's going to be a lot of, if you have a top 10 pick in the UFHL and you're looking at this list, there's nobody you're going to be disappointed drafting in the UFHL entry auction.
Yeah, it certainly, we as a franchise, Duckman's Domination, and a scouting agency, high level of which is we're affiliated with, are very happy to see Shane Wright, and certainly that was no surprise. And I would be shocked if anybody does beat out Shane Wright. I'd be shocked if anybody has him ranked lower than one. And I would honestly say probably it is for shock value if you have Shane Wright not number one at this point. Not saying things can't change, Larry, but if you're putting somebody else other than Shane Wright at the top of your list right now, you're probably doing it to get the reaction that you would get from a lot of people. So no surprise there, but some great names, and then a lot of interesting numbers and details when it comes to the rankings that were submitted.
Indeed, and this is interesting, Dean, by the numbers. 4 prospects were in the top 10 for all 7 scouts. That was Wright, Savoy, Lambert, and actually Yurov Slakowski, who's the Czech forward who's playing in Finland. Those were the 4 that were consensus. So interestingly, a guy like Ivan Murashenko, he was top 5 on 6 of the list, but one scout had him at number 7. Then you go into 15 prospects in the top 32 for all 7 scouts. David Yirasek, as we mentioned, Dean, would be the 16th prospect there. He was in the top 12 for 6 of the 7 prospects and 6 of the 7 scouts, and one scout had him at 33, the first pick of the second round, or just outside the top 32. So essentially 16 of 32, half the first round, are considered, kind of locks to be first rounders as of today. And then after that, Dean, it's wide open. Only 24 prospects were ranked in the top 64 for all 7 scouts, and 138 different prospects were ranked at least once in the top 74 by the 7 scouts. So that shows, the top 15, top 16, there's quite a bit of maybe not the order, but the actual grouping that makes up that top 16 is pretty set. After that, it's completely wide open for the back half of the first round, as well as the entire second round. So much different prospects in and out. And one thing I noticed, Dean, is you got to look at the scouts that possess or are property. These prospects are property of what scouts is always a cool part when we're doing these rankings. And in the first round, Dean, the top 32 pipeline prospects, Arnie Entz led the way with 9 of 32. And then actually Alpine prospects, Jeff Ray, pulled away from the pack when you went outside the first round. They have 15 prospects in the top 64 and 28 overall for Alpine prospects out of those 138. And then you run down the top 5 there, Dean. 22 were property of Fanalytica.tech. That's combining 4 different scouts. Fanalytica is one of the progressive scouting agencies in the UFFS ecosystem. They have 4 hired scouts. All 4 of them had at least one prospect in the top 138, including 22 combined. And then pipeline prospects, Dean, Arnie again had 18. CanWest Scouting Agency with Harrison Fallow had 15. And the Wise Guys prospects with Nelson Martin had 7 of the top 138. So pretty spread out, especially when you consider that 25 scouts, Dean, had at least one prospect ranked among those ranked in the top 64 at least once. So that's really cool that 25 different scouts are represented with at least one time they had a prospect ranked in somebody's top 64.
Well, and I think the coolest thing was the 3 prospects that made the list that were unowned by scouts.
Yeah, open market. This is always going to be a hot thing when the rankings come out, is because, there's probably close to 300 prospects already, Dean, from this 2022 draft class that are registered by scouts. So the fact that 3 prospects that made it into, one of these 7 scouts, or these 7 scouts top 64, 3 of them were still open market, was shocking. Last year, there was only 1 at the preliminary rankings that was unknown. This time there was 3. And as you can imagine, Dean, when those names came out on the rankings, they didn't last long. All 3 were European forwards, I should note, but Joel Jansson, a Swedish forward, went to the Wise Guys prospects, Nelson Martins. Gustav Karlsson, another Swedish forward, snatched up by Arnie Ensign Pipeline prospects. And then this one's an interesting one, Dean, is Marcel. Duplicate name, repeat name. Beast Mythology Scouting and Jamie Swain grabbed him. And that's 2 in a row now, Dean, where there's been repeat names among Czech Republic forwards that are draft eligible. You'll likely remember Ivan from a couple of years ago. Now we have Marcel. So I believe he's a Czech forward. He might be Slovakian, but I think he's Czech. And again, some of these names, Dean, were new to me. As heavily as I've scouted the 2022 draft class, I included my own personal top 100 or top 110, you could say, because I gave the next 10 names on my list. And yet some of these prospects that were in the top 64 for other scouts were guys that I had to turn around and go to Instat and other places and look up and get some information on. So always a learning experience, and always fun when the scouts come together to form their consensus UFFS rankings.
Marcel is so nice, they named him twice. I love it. Ivan, the same way. I worked with a guy named Barry, and it was actually spelled different, the first name and the last name. So that's a little bit different as well. Okay, speaking of different, and our league is much different than anything out there. We've if you've ever watched any of this show, you know how different and how better it is. But we even have mascots. Is that what I'm hearing?
We may be meeting the UFHL's first mascot later this month, or it's in the works, Dean. Cameron Turner of the North Stars, the North Stars owner and president of hockey operations, reached out with this tidbit, and I love it. He says the North Stars have been able to get the interest of a high-profile artist who has worked with multiple NHL and PHF teams to design a character we can use in promotional material and merchandise. Her name is Mio, and she has a really nice following amongst hockey fans. She's worked with the Dallas Stars, Minnesota Whitecaps, Buffalo Buttes, just to name a few. And Cameron says this could be a big partnership, should be great for marketing and merch, and I'm very excited to see where she goes with it. So we're thinking, Dean, essentially a digital mascot for the North Stars franchise, which obviously has a cool brand already. Can't wait to see what they come up with. Should be very cool on the mascot front, and great to have somebody like Mio get involved with the UFHL, and maybe there'll be a lot of franchises knocking on her door to do up digital mascots going forward.
Well, I think it just shows that, where it doesn't matter where you are, whether you're competing for a title or, you're rebuilding, you can still be involved. You can still generate things through merchandise. You can still be active. We all want to win the Klein Cup, and we all want to be able to be champions, but you can still do something with your franchise, even if you're not competitive.
Exactly, Dean. That's what I really liked about it. When Cameron reached out to me, I thought, wow, the North Stars right now, they're in last place in the UFHL standings. They're rebuilding. The roster's in transition. They got some exciting young players like Jason Robertson, but generally speaking, they're building for the future. And sometimes you can really lose interest in a fantasy league, even a month or two into the season in a regular home league. If you're at the bottom of the standings, you got a bunch of injuries, and you kind of tune it out. Not here in the UFHL, Dean. There's always something to work on, and why not get a mascot, right? Like, who thinks of that when you're thinking of, well, what should I do now? And a lot of people are focused on trades and gameplay, but there's so many more aspects and elements to the UFFS ecosystem. And now, creating a digital mascot to really promote your merchandise and your brand, because as we've said, Dean, and I know you mentioned it to the baseball owners, the brand new 30 franchise owners in UFLB, your brand could be worth as much as your roster someday when you go to sell. And certainly it is that case in the real world with how strong the professional sports brands are. And no different here in professional fantasy sports. You build this brand out, you get the following, this mascot helps you bring in kids. Maybe now kids are going to choose the North Stars as their favorite franchise when they start tuning in, and certainly getting the betting going. If you have a mascot to send out some videos and digital videos and promote your betting side, or come bet on the North Stars, or whatever the case, there's going to be so much opportunity by going down a path like this. And just for Cameron to get creative and think outside the box and not dwell on the standings, or just, okay, I can forget that league till next year because I'm at the bottom. It's like, no, what can I do in the present to really help generate revenue and add value to my franchise? And so congratulations to Cameron and the North Stars for thinking outside the box.
Love it. Absolutely love it. All right, let's get to the week that was in trades. And this week, our trade recap should be brought to you by Dairy Queen, because there's a whole lot of Blizzard action going on.
14 trades, Dean, since we last talked just prior to Halloween. The Blizzard are involved in 7 of them. So half these trades involve the Blizzard. As mentioned, Jessica Stuckey promoted to a co-owner, has more of a say perhaps. Well, she's always been the GM, but maybe now feels as co-owner she can put her stamp on the franchise a little more with the approval of Showtime. And really taking a page out of the Bentley Jacks playbook the past couple of weeks, Dean, by flipping these players, a lot of them, before they could unpack their bags as members of the Blizzard. But looking at the top 5 trades of the week, like we like to do on UFHL Now, the Blizzard are going to figure prominently. And this trade, Dean, to start us off, as you can see, has 2 legends swapped, essentially. Ryan Getzlaf going to the Royals, the more productive player in the present. The Royals are battling the Grizzlies for first place. They want to upgrade Ryan Getzlaf in the present in exchange for Joe Thornton, who obviously the Royals have not wanted to part with. He's got great Legends League value, as well as Carson Soucy and a couple second-round picks over not this coming year, but the next 2 years, a couple second-round picks. But I will say, Dean, and Arnie reached out about this, about how does this work with the trade back of a retired player? And yes, if Joe Thornton retires a member of the Blizzard, they can still trade his retired rights to the Royals as part of a trade. You can move retired players. So there's a possibility here that the Royals are sending Joe Thornton to the Blizzard with already some type of a agreement in place that when he retires, a package has already been worked out that could send Joe Thornton back to the Royals, is sort of my understanding. And I think we will see, as more and more players retire and those retired lists grow, that the UFHL franchises with an eye to the Legends League will start maneuvering the way the Royals may have done here with Joe Thornton for Ryan Getzlaf. But 2 big name guys that are certainly got Legends League value trading places in the UFHL.
Yeah, and that would be 2 separate transactions. That it wouldn't be a part of this transaction, and that's something that maybe people didn't know about. You just you can have an agreement between the Royals and the Blizzard, and then you make the separate deal later on. So I think that's a good strategy for teams, and for other teams that want to keep those players for the Legends value, they can hold on to them. So always looking with an eye to the future. And speaking of that, this trade also happened between the Assassins and the Yetis.
And that's a good point, Dean, is that it's not a futures trade because it's not agreed to. There's nothing in writing platform-wise, right, league-wise. If the Blizzard don't want to trade Joe Thornton back to the Royals, the league isn't going to force them to. So that's the risk that Arnie and the Royals took by trading Joe Thornton, is there's no guarantee they're getting him back. But certainly the preliminary negotiations or between the franchises, that potential trade back has been discussed. Trade number 2, Dean, this one's interesting as well. Matt Dumba to the Yetis. The Yetis obviously traded away Tyson Berry for Keith Yandel. Keith Yandel had a hot start. He slowed down. Matt Dumba gives their defense a boost. They also get a couple second-round picks, which Scott Lowater, being the wheeler and dealer that he is, will likely try to upgrade, include them in trades to upgrade other talent or roster spots throughout the season. But they did give up Max Comtois, who is obviously an effective player, lots of shots, lots of hits, and has been scoring goals for Anaheim. Young player. The Assassins are happy to get Max Comtois. And Matt Gerslick, Dean, as well, is not too far behind Matt Dumba. So swapping the defenders, and the Assassins get Max Comtois, I'm sure they're happy. But the Yetis, again, Looking at the win now picture, they're in third, fourth place, battling with West Coast Express. They want to push up and be right there with the Grizzlies and Royals. And Matt Dumba is probably the biggest impact player in this trade.
All right, the third one we're chatting about now, Blizzard back in it. A couple of goalies involved in this one as well.
Yeah, no shortage of goalies on the move this week in the UFHL, Dean, and goalie swaps. But this one being the biggest of the bunch, Mikko Koskinen, who obviously Mike Smith, this was before Mike Smith had a setback. It looked like Mike Smith was going to play this week. Now he's back in Edmonton. So Mikko Koskinen's been carrying the load for Edmonton. Obviously, the Oilers are one of the better teams in the NHL off the start of the season. They're winning more often than not. So that's a good upgrade in goal. Now the Bentley Jacks have Darcy Kemper and Mikko Koskinen, so they're very solid in goal. It costs them, though. Thomas Greiss, obviously a capable backup who's been as good or better than Alex Nedeljkovic for Detroit to start the year, as well as Simon Holmstrom, who was a first-round pick, and Nick Bonino, who's an effective middle six forward. So, and of course, the Blizzard turned around and flipped both Bonino and Greiss from this return as well, and managed to get more future assets in those deals as well, or get a younger goalie in Alexander Gorgiev from the Rangers. So again, it works for both teams, but Simon Holmstrom's a nice piece for the future for the Blizzard.
Yeah, it's massive shuffling by the Blizzard this week. It was just in the last, since we've talked, and as you mentioned, they were involved in 7 of the 14 trades, including a big one involving first round pick Jake Gardner. I'm a fan of Jordan Martinook for the salary that he makes, and this is a really interesting trade with a big name going the other way.
Yeah, the Blizzard involved in 4 of our top 5 this week, Dean, including 7 out of 14, as we mentioned. But Hampus Lindholm to the Battlehawks. He's the key player there for the Battlehawks. They've had some injuries. Obviously, Drew Dowd, he's out on the back end. So looking to bring in somebody like Hampus Lindholm to keep that production going. The Battlehawks are in that 5-13 mix, Dean, which are separated by like 40 points. So they want to stay in there. They don't want to lose any ground. So Hampus Lindholm helps. And then the other side of this trade, Dean, certainly the Blizzard, again, eye to the future, get that first round pick in 2024. That's the key piece. They obviously traded their 2022 first round pick to Duckmans, which is going to be, by all accounts, looks like it'll be a lottery pick and bidding in the on prospects in the top 5 of the 2022 NHL draft. So they're going to start looking at 23 and 24 as their real turnaround drafting years, or certainly start accumulating these first round picks and maybe target some proven talent down the road. But the Blizzard for the time being are content to look to the future, while the Battlehawks are in need of win now talent in light of injuries, and a guy like Hampus Lindholm will help the Battlehawks in the short term and potentially be a long-term player there as well.
All right, final trade to discuss. This was kind of funny, actually. Clark Monroe, who did the Friday night baseball auction with me, he actually saw this on Twitter and thought it was an NHL trade at first, but then he's like, "Wait a minute, cross hands." But he's like, "This is such a real we tricked him into thinking this was a realistic NHL trade." I thought it was quite funny.
That's great, Dean, and certainly it looks like it, right? Like,
yeah.
This is a value type trade you could see in the NHL. In this case, the Yetis, again, having moved Tyson Barrie and Keith Yandel, not picking up the power play points that he was at the start of the year. Cale Clegg, with Drew Doughty being out, Cale Clegg's up in LA. He's playing on the top power play unit, and he's basically been a point per game guy. He seems to get a power play assist every game. The Yetis targeted that. The Yetis were hopeful that Nolan Foote would be in the NHL this season. Obviously, Dawson Mercer and Alexander Holtz and some of the other young guys in New Jersey are ahead of Nolan Foote on the depth chart. So he's back on the protected list at that time for the Yetis, and they looked at it as he's a guy they could sacrifice to get again somebody who's going to help them in the present, like a Cale Clegg, who's still a young guy and has a lot of upside. Cross Hannes being a prospect there in exchange for Zach Sanford, who's a banger and a crasher, but hasn't had much of an impact yet with Ottawa. And certainly, again, here's the flip job, right? The Blizzard turn around and flip Zach Sanford to Kamikaze. We all know Donnie loves the bangers and crashers, the hitters and Pims guys. Kamikaze's loaded with them, and Zach Sanford's a good fit there. And the Blizzard get back Henry Yoki Harju. So they get back 2 first-round picks, Dean, Nolan Foote and Henry Yoki Harju, in exchange for Hannes and Clegg. So I think when you look at all total what the body of work that the Blizzard did over the past 2 weeks, they've put some nice pieces in place for their future, including adding another first-round pick.
So impressive. And, they have our first round pick, Duckman's Domination, for 2023 as well. And if any team missed out, there's a lot more that's available on the UFHL trade block. I mean, this is like going to the supermarket right now. Pick up whatever you need for supper and go home and get some points for your UFHL team.
Absolutely. But buyer beware, Dean. It's a seller's market right now in the UFHL. Injuries across the league. You look at the Gators. Nathan McKinnon and William Karlsson are out. They're down Patrick Laine now. So like all these franchises, and again, with all 32 franchises getting a revenue sharing type payout system in the UFHL, the higher you are, the better. So there's a lot of names here on the trade block, but certainly we're looking at it as a seller's market because there's more buyers than sellers. And you look at the scoring forwards, Dean, and just run down the list of names there. Sagan, Besser, Voracek, Zuccarello, Pajot, Tatar, Domi. When you got guys like McKinnon and Laine out, like these guys have significant value around the league. And I think those buyers, there's going to be some bidding wars for some of these names, especially the three that are potentially selling high. Sergey Bobrovsky, he's looking like Russia's starting goalie for the Olympics right now. He's looking like the front runner for the Vezina trophy in the NHL. And there was so much talk about him being the $10 million man and how bad his contract is and how it moved a couple times. Well, right now he's one of the MVPs in the UFHL certainly for the Battlehawks. They're listing Zach Hyman, who scored again last night and has been a goal machine for the Oilers, a great fit there in Edmonton. The Brutes, Jesse Gill, big Leafs fan, big fan of Zach Hyman during his time in Toronto, now listening on Zach Hyman. And the other one, Dean, who's on an amazing heater right now is Troy Terry in Anaheim. He's looking like a legit, star player in the making right now. The Yetis just traded Max Comtois. They're also listing on Troy Terry. And these are the players that, if you think there's going to be a regression in Zach Hyman or Troy Terry, then, or even Sergey Bobrovsky, right now their value will never be higher than it is today. You look on the flip side, Dean, the young talent that's available. Capo Caco, has been pointless on the season. A bit of a disappointment for the Rangers, but still a real quality player and a huge piece to the Blizzards' future. Their number one young player or hope for the future. They're now, for the first time, listing on him. Peyton Krebs, Dean, obviously involved in the Eichel blockbuster, now a prospect for Buffalo with guys like Dylan Cousins and Jack Quinn. But Peyton Krebs, for the first time ever, West Coast Express is listing on Peyton Krebs, trying to maybe, Brock Besser for Peyton Krebs, something like that. But again, salary cap too, Dean. This is a full cap league. A lot of these franchises like West Coast Express, they don't have the cap space to be big buyers. But some slow guys in the young talent available. Yegor Sharangovich was Jack Hughes' wingman last year. Everybody thought he was going to have a big, 50-point breakout season. And that hasn't happened so far, mainly because Jack Hughes is on the shelf. But the Yetis are listing on him. And again, with the Gators, Dean, with Nathan McKinnon and William Karlsson out and seeing them slide down the standings on a nightly basis, they're not going to give away Scott Prunovich. But if he can land them one of those scoring forwards that are available to make up for the absence of McKinnon or Karlsson, I think that's in play. And then certainly defensemen are always valuable. And Ryan Pulak from the Royals and Matthias Ekholm from the Generals are the two names that are currently out there on the UFHL trade block. But more buyers than sellers, in my opinion, Dean. I think a lot of franchises are really enjoying the gameplay and the parity this season. So I think that a lot of names on the trade block, but some high prices and some bidding wars in order to upgrade any talent going forward.
Well, yeah, and you mentioned the salary cap. You can bring in as much as you want right now while a guy's on the shelf, but you got to make sure he fits the cap. Or if a guy's out long term and you're going to be bringing him back, you always have to be aware of who you bring in and how they fit in when somebody does return. And and that's there are franchises that have maybe not as much depth, but they have the right depth for that franchise that is suffering some injuries now. So the cap always has to work, and bottom feeding teams like Duckman should be paying attention right now. And we do have a couple of guys in Silverberg and in Phil Kessel that could help out a few teams, but you got to make sure you can fit it under the cap as always. Okay, so Larry, I think you guys did a great job this summer. I think other than plus minus still being in our league, I was very happy with a lot of the moves, but we have run into a bit of a snag with penalties drawn. And once again, I think the league has been very proactive in reacting to this and making a choice for owners to make about penalties drawn. I'll just tell you, we voted to get rid of them and make it retroactive. That was our vote. And then nobody gets any kind of an advantage from something that wasn't the spirit of the rule.
Yeah, Dean, penalties drawn were added to the UFHL this season and talked about at length by the owners at the off-season meetings on the understanding that a penalty drawn generates a power play. It's got to give your team a benefit. Unfortunately, Fantrax's penalties drawn category doesn't accommodate that. It's a penalty drawn period. So offsetting coincidental minors, a fight gets a penalty drawn category. If you get two guys get 10-minute misconducts, well, they each get a penalty drawn bonus point, and it was resulting in too many bonus points. Franchises didn't like it. It wasn't working as intended or the way it was discussed to be implemented. So the league has stepped up and said, well, you know what? We're over a month into the season, or exactly, I guess, today, Dean, is 1 month into the season. Season started October 12th. Today's November 12th. Evaluating this as the league admin and Commissioner Andrea Krandic, we took a look at it and said, you know what? This isn't the category that we intended to have, where it only rewarded or you only got points if there was a positive impact made by drawing a penalty, creating a power play. So let's put this out to the franchises. You have the option to vote to remove the category. And if you do want to remove it, do you want it retroactive or only going forward? And I think, Dean, your vote is where I would lie on it as well. I think the category isn't having the desired impact, so I would want to probably remove it and reevaluate next offseason. And if you're removing it, I think it makes sense to do it retroactively so that nobody benefits from a fight getting a bonus point for a penalty drawn, or a 10-minute misconduct getting pumped up by these penalties drawn that aren't actually, truthful penalties drawn. And to be honest, I was surprised that the category worked that way on Fantrax, because the NHL does track penalties drawn. You see Connor McDavid or Matthew Tkachuk, whether you're an antagonist or a speedster like McDavid, the NHL does track, okay, which star players draw the most penalties, generate the most power plays for their NHL team. I just assumed that's how it would be calculated here, but unfortunately, it's all penalties drawn, including coincidentals and fights and misconducts. So, in my opinion, reevaluate next offseason. Hopefully, the UFFS gameplay engine can sort that out and have it only be true penalties drawn that generate a power play, and that can have the positive impact.
Well, and you have to look at this. We're a month into the season. The most penalties drawn is 10. So it's not that big. The best thing for the league is just to get rid of it. Then nobody gets any kind of an advantage, and we retool it. So as I say, oftentimes people are probably sick of it. You have to think, what is the best for the league? Why should anybody get an advantage in a stat that is not working the way it was intended to? So that's just my vote. Everybody has the right to vote on their own way, but I hope everybody does vote. And the deadline is, I think tonight at 11 p.m. Eastern time. I think that was what Andrea sent out. So certainly, hopefully everybody votes and votes for the betterment of the league and how it should be fair for everybody, because everybody is losing their points. It's not just like some teams. Anybody that had a penalty drawn, yes, some might have more than others, but it happens to everybody, and that's just how I feel it should be. All right, finally, we always like to wrap up with some insider advice. What do you have for us this week, Larry?
Yeah, Dean, especially being that it is a month into the season. Obviously, preseason waivers are such a big thing in the NHL and the UFHL. All those players in both leagues are now, the players that cleared waivers prior to the season are no longer exempt. They're now require waivers again. So again, with so many injuries in the UFHL, Dean, a lot of those players that didn't make your opening night roster that were waived and on the protected list have since been called up all across the league. And they've been going back and forth from active to protected, from the UFHL down to the minors, back and forth, in some cases multiple times a week, with these players that, they just need a body to fill in because of injuries. Well, you got to be careful now, because if you send him down and he needs waivers again, you're going to get fined. You're going to forfeit points for the day he was in the lineup. And, you're also going to a forced waivers auction. That player's going straight up for a waivers auction. And I think what we're seeing now, Dean, is nobody's clearing waivers in the UFHL. Because so many injuries and COVID protocols across the league, everybody needs, any point they can get. Lucas Carlson, I seen he got one block shot last night for Florida. That's great, 0.4 points. And you look at the standings, Dean, how close it is. There's some places where there's 3 franchises within 1 point. So a block shot, it's crazy how important maximizing your games played are and getting as many bodies into the lineup as possible. So I don't think a lot of players are going to clear waivers, but the important thing, Dean, is remember that You can follow the waivers tracker on the UFHL Google Sheets, but all these players that previously cleared waivers that are maybe in your active roster, when you go to send them down again, they got to go through waivers or you're going to suffer the consequences.
Well, and that's why myself and Curtis and Harrison were working on a deal with Can West. We made the deal for Michael Kempney. We had to make that deal before November 12th because we did, Kempney would remain in the minors. So we were working on actually a quite a bit of a bigger deal, but we just couldn't get it finished in time. So we just had to go back to the original because, I wanted to have, Kempney in the minors. So it is very important to be watching when you are making a trade. Not only is this guy waiver eligible, but how long might it be? So terrific insider advice once again, Larry, and great to be chatting hockey as a month into the season. There seems like there's so much has happened already. I mean, just on the McDavid goal scale, we're already at like 4 or 5 great ones.
It's been a wild first month, Dean, both in the NHL and the UFHL, and intense. And again, the parity in the UFHL has never been better in season 3, and we're loving that. And 2 things I can leave you with, Dean, is the scout rankings. Obviously, they're also the top 64 from the consensus rankings. Nathan Bender, our director of logistics, will be applying that to the entry auction algorithm. So soon franchises will know the projected minimum bids for those 2022 draft picks, 1 to 64. So sort of where those bids are going to come in. That's going to come in the weeks to come. And then the other thing, Dean, going back to UFWJ and Arnie Entz of Pipeline Prospects, who obviously has a lot of the players that'll be starring in the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors League. He says, he left us with a quote here. He says, "The more I think about it, this league will be so next level. I feel people looking in from the outside aren't even scratching the surface of the possibilities with this." And again, I think that's when you bring in the dynasty element and the protected list, and just, everybody's has their home league for NHL play. Nobody has a home league for World Juniors play. You might go into an office pools with some buddies and a pick'em type or box pool type thing, but nothing on the dynasty league level. So I think Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors is going to completely revolutionize that tournament and generate a lot more attention for the tournament itself going forward. And can't wait to get the franchise auction up and running next weekend.
Yeah, next Saturday and Sunday, so much great stuff. People can register. They have to register if they want to get in. So the best way to do that is to email Andrea.
Yes, sir. Email akarandak@uffsports.com is the way in, and certainly sooner the better, just so we have a good idea. And that way you need to register, Dean, in order to receive the passcode to enter the auction room as an eligible bidder. That's why we want to make sure everybody bidding is legit. And so definitely touch base with Andrea between now and next Friday.
Excellent stuff, Larry. Thanks so much. Have a great weekend.
Same to you, Dean.
This is UFHL Now with Dean Millard. Get in the game, where you own the game.
Always great stuff when I get to chat with the insider, and there's always so much to discuss. All right, really quickly, let's get the duck call. It's simple this week. There's a lot of injuries out there. There's a lot of movement going on. Phil Kessel and Jakob Silverberg will be available. Silverberg on the COVID list right now. He'll be back. Kessel scored the other day. So if you're looking at Phil Kessel, you're looking at Silverberg, the preferred return is 2022 first-round picks. That's what we're looking for. Doesn't mean you have to pay it, but that's the price that we will be asking for those two players. They are available if you are in need. We have some smaller depth players like Mark Stahl that could be available as well if you just need a body in the lineup. Thanks to Larry Fisher for joining me on the program. The Insider segment is always highly entertaining and educational. Thanks to you, the listener, the viewer, and you, the UFHL owner, GM, that tunes into this show each and every week. Have yourself a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the hockey and get prepped for the Ultimate Fantasy World Juniors franchise auctions next week. Thanks again to Larry Fisher. I'm Dean Millard. Have yourself a great weekend.